The book of Enoch is used as a historical reference for various points that people have for alternative theories on history and the physiology of, ourselves and our plane of existence. But in the book of Enoch, it gives the dimensions of the ancient titans, of the giants that existed before and around the time of the great flood, according to, that mode of thought. And it says that those beings were 3,000 ells tall, E-L-L-S, which is also an interesting word, being that it's directly related to the word El. But basically an El was the equivalent of a Hebrew cubit, which was, from the tip of a person's finger to their elbow, which today equates to approximately 18 inches. Now, if you multiply 18 inches times 3,000, that's 4,500 feet tall. And that's only the arm span of a human today, of how big we are today. We're going off of that measurement. With that being said, there's other, now I'm going to start off talking about biblical passages, because that's what a lot of people can, relate to, because the Bible is one of the most popular books compiled. But for example, in the book of Enoch, it talks about these titanic beings being 3,000 ells tall, or 4,500 feet tall. That's nearly a mile tall. In another contemporary of the book of Genesis, called the book of Jubilees, there's actually a story where, the ancient Hebrew people, they were gathered together at the base of this mountain in all of their glory, like thousands upon thousands of these Hebrew people, all together in one spot, right? Basically the size of a city. And this giant went up on top of the mountain that they were camped next to and picked up a massive rock, and he was going to throw it from the top of the mountain and basically squish and kill all of these Hebrew people. So how can a being that's only 12 or 13 feet tall accomplish something like that? They can't. Not only that, but later on in the book of, I think it's maybe Exodus or Joshua, there's a story where the Hebrews sent out some scouts to spy out this land, right? Because their God told them to go take this land from the inhabitants that were there. Well, those inhabitants were the descendants of Anak. That's what it calls them in the Bible, the descendants of Anak, which those of you who have looked into the ancient alien theory sounds a whole lot like the Anunnaki, right? The giants that once existed a long time ago. Or like, I compare them to the elves very seriously. We can talk about that in a minute, but when I mention the elves, I'm just as serious as talking about elves existing and what they actually are and what they've come to turn into today as I am any other subject that I talk about. But anyways, these spies, these scouts that went out to find out, what was going on in that land of the giants, they came back and they said, hey, we're kind of scared to go over there. We were like grasshoppers in their eyes. We were like grasshoppers to them. And people pawn that particular reference off as being metaphorical, just saying, oh, they were just really big, but they were still like 13, 14 feet tall. You don't seem like a grasshopper if you're, 4 feet taller than somebody. You seem like a grasshopper when you're as big as, like that picture I sent of the Burj Khalifa. You can look at any of the giant skyscrapers, and those would be like a small titan in those days. And it's not just the Bible. It's many references and various ancient scriptures and manuscripts that all reference a time when these gods of the gods, the fathers of the ancient god-like beings that once existed, and they're not here today, we don't see their presence, but all of these writings speak about the time where the gods did exist, and the gods and these beings interacted with humanity from the very beginning. Now, those god beings, they had their own conflict with the titans or with the giants. And there's this age-old battle between the gods, or this Superman type race of beings in various religions and histories, and they always fought against the Titans or the giants. There's a reason that this has manifested throughout our times and our cultures. Whenever we talk about giants, we usually picture them negatively, with maybe the exception of a few Disney movies or whatnot. There might be one good giant, but the rest of them are all evil. The rest of them are man-eating. The rest of them are out to destroy humanity.
Yeah, like Jack the Giant Slayer. All those giants were evil.
Jack the Giant Slayer, BFG. I don't know if you guys have seen BFG. Highly esoteric movie. It has the giants. They eat people. And in the book of Enoch, it actually said that at first the people were serving the giants, but their hunger was so overdeveloped that they just began eating everything. They began consuming the other beings, and then the gods went to war with the Titans. And Jack and the Beanstalk is a great example, because not only do you have the Titans represented, but there's a couple of other interesting factors. One, they're located up above us in the sky, right? So you go upwards and you enter into another realm, another plane of existence where there's these otherworldly, fantastic beings. Then you have this strange tree represented by the beanstalk that shoots up and gives you access to these other realms. And I've made a couple of videos hinting at some of these concepts. For example, the no forest on flat earth theory, which basically states that many of the world's mesas today are basically tree stumps of giant beanstalk-like ancient trees that have been cut down. So, what do we ask ourselves? Why were they cut down? Well, sometimes the simplest answer is the best answer. Why did Jack cut down his beanstalk? To keep the giants from invading, right? Why were all of our world trees cut down? Why do we see all of this evidence in the world around us of stuff that we take for granted and we don't know what it is, like a mountain? People will look at a mountain, we've just given it a name, mountain. We just label it mountain. We take it for granted. We don't ask ourselves, how did that come to be? That's a pile of dirt. We don't make the connection, how do I make a pile of dirt?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's got to be terraformed. The ground must be excavated in order to heap it up. That's how it's made. Where do these giant boulders and these really strange rock formations come from? Can we really just chalk it up to rain and wind and then add a magical number of millions of years to it? And then we're supposed to finally we're given permission to use the right side of our brain, our creative side, because they give us the millions of years marker, forcing our creative side to go along with what they've already instructed us. So they've told us what it's not. And then they allow our imagination to take place when they tell us what it is.
Here's the thing with the giant trees, man. It's what I wonder too. I just saw Karen B saying something in the chat, but it's like, who cut them down and with what tools? And then it goes back to me for the giants. Obviously, there were bigger people, right, cutting down these trees. But it is very interesting. It's a subject that at first I wasn't taking very seriously, but now I'm totally on board. I totally see it. And yes, movies like the BFG, they have the North Pole symbolism as well. They're hanging out in the Arctic. You got giants. They're hanging out next to the Tree of Life. Somebody in the chat was wondering if you've seen Attack on Titan. Have you heard of Attack on Titan?
I have seen the previews and whatnot, but I have not actually seen the movie. From what I gather, there's a big wall that the people have built to keep the giants out.
Yeah.
Now, if you're in the Flat Earth community, that automatically equates to the Antarctic ice wall or ring, that supposedly surrounds us, and maybe even some sort of dome structure or barrier around the outside peripheral edges of our Middle Earth realm to keep something out. Or some people speculate to keep us in.
Yeah, true. And the giants in that show, it's an anime show, and it's also been made into 2 movies, I believe. I've watched the first one, but these giants are terrible. They just come through and they just destroy everything and eat everybody that they can find. And they're like butt naked. It's horrible, man. It's horrible.
You know, another good movie reference is in Thor. You know, at the beginning, first of all, think about Thor. All of the actually, hold on. Let me step back a second. Movies are a wonderful avenue for truth for those who are seeking the truth. You'll get something out of a movie depending on what the movie is. For those who are not seeking truth, you're allowed to remain in your ignorance and just be amused by watching the movie. It's a wonderful tool for sharing something for those who are seeking it and just giving pure, thoughtless entertainment to those who are not seeking it. But like I was saying, Thor, right? In the movie Thor, at first they show Thor and these ancient Nordic gods who are the Asir or the Vanir of Nordic legends, the gods of the Norse, and all those countries related to the northern peoples. But they fight the frost giants. These beings, now you got to remember, the Asir and the Vanir, or like the gods like Thor and Odin and Freya and all these gods, they were giant already compared to us today. They were big. They were massive. They were strong. They were like Superman. And they fought giants who were giant to them, right? And another one of the enemies of Thor was the elves. There were these dark elves, these rebel elven race that Thor fought against. And like I was saying, I absolutely equate many of these ancient gods, especially the ones that are portrayed as being either blue or albino, directly to the elven race or the elven beings that's what it's turned into today. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. What are there's the Smithsonian, right? They talk about how they have, what's the largest giant that's on record, like publicly for, us dumbed down masses to actually know about? Well,
as far as giant people, the tallest person on record was Robert Wadlow. He was born in the early 1900s. He was 8 feet 11 inches. For a man. That's the tallest actual human on record. But when you go back to like ancient records or whatnot, for example, in the Bible, it talks about King Og, and it gives the dimensions of King Og's sarcophagus or his deathbed or whatnot. And it kind of makes him out to be about, between 14 and 16 feet tall, somewhere around there. But like I was saying, that doesn't add up with all of the clues and breadcrumbs and puzzle pieces from around the world. I mean, look at ancient Egypt. Look at those sarcophagus. Look at those statues. Look at the entrances to many of their temples. Why would you make an entrance that big if it didn't have any use? Were they really that simple-minded to think that they just needed a huge physical entrance for some sort of spiritual god being? No, they made it physically that big for physical beings who were that big.
Right. Have you ever heard of Gog and Magog?
Yes.
I'm sure that's popped up in your research before. Those guys it looks like it's in all over the Bible, Genesis and Ezekiel. There's this lady, I brought her up on my last podcast. Her name is Rosette Delacroix. Her channel is bad, bro. It's really good. I think you would love it. She does a lot of work on the giants and all sorts of stuff. Let's shift the conversation over to elves and stuff. You actually do research on elves, and we're obviously showed an elven race, and there's the elven race throughout all the mythologies, all the games we play nowadays. And you can see, from Lord of the Rings all the way to Star Trek with Spock. Spock is an elf, right? What's up with that? What's up with elves? Okay, so I'm going to give you like the short version for everybody out there of a video I did called The Secret of the El
Viz, the elves, right? The secret of the elves. And basically,